Welcome back, DIYers. Today's video, we're repairing and replacing the corner trim on the house. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's a fairly simple project. Just rip off the old, get some new boards, and hammer them back up. Well, not in my case. In my case, there were several little things that needed to be done behind the scenes before I could just put up the new corner trim. Now, the reason I'm replacing the corner trim is because, one, at the bottom, they were all rotted. Now, I could have cut some of them off and probably got by, but doing so, I would have exposed the siding and this open corner that you'll see here in a little bit. And then the other reason is because the edges were delaminating. And reasons for that are, one, this house hasn't been painted since it was built in 2008. And two, with what I've seen, the workmanship so far, I know they didn't properly prepare these edges so that water wouldn't get in there and cause that delamination. So with that, let's get started, and I'll show you the steps I went through to get my corner trim replaced. So the original plan was to have the trim sit flush against the house and have the siding butt into it. Now, the way it's hung on here now, where it's on top of the siding, is an alternative method that's accepted by the manufacturer. But before I could just do that, I had to do a few things. Well, one, I had to mark off where I was going to cut the siding. And so what I did was I got a 3/16 inch spacer block, and I'd set it against the trim and marked down the siding on every piece of siding, and that would signify where I would cut the siding, and it would also give me my 3/16 inch expansion gap that's required. And so I went through and did that. I had to make sure that there was lumber behind here to nail to. And so what I did was I cut a little slit in the tar paper. Yes, tar paper. As I said in the other videos, my house is siding and then tar paper. Tar paper is my waterproofing. So I cut a slit in the tar paper and peeled it up to look and see what I had. And I was pleasantly surprised that on the back of the house, there is OSB, I think it was 7/16 OSB plywood, which meant great, I could cut this, I'd have something to nail to and be all set. But on the sides of the house, that's a different story. And there is no plywood. It's siding, tar paper, insulation, sheetrock, house. So I had to see if there was lumber where I needed it. And I needed lumber to be where I was going to nail the siding, because it is now, it's nailed up underneath here. But when I cut it, I'm going to have to nail it here to keep it down so it's not flapping in the breeze. And then two, I had to have something to nail the siding, or nail the trim to itself. So what I did was I took a piece of wire and twisted it up and made a hook on it. And I just slid that piece of wire along the tar paper and the lumber, and I would just tap along until it twisted. Then I'd pull back, and that would signify the edge of a 2x. And then I would pull that out and measure that distance, and then go look and see where it hit. And in some cases, I had lumber to nail the siding, but in most of them I did not. There would be nothing there in order to nail the siding to. Now, if I had the plywood like it is on the back, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just nail into the plywood and be all set. So since there wasn't anything there for the siding to nail to, I had to fall back on the old method, the way it came off. All right, we got all the boards pulled off, and I pulled all these nails and left them here in a pile for you to see. But what I really want you to notice is the rusted ones. So if they didn't primer and paint this, and they didn't primer and paint these cut edges, do you think they primered and painted those? What I found was when I was pulling these nails, those rusted ones were up about this far, which is about 3 feet. So what does that mean? Well, it just goes to show that at least the bottom 2 to 3 feet of your house really needs extra protection. But the next thing I need to do is fix the holes in the tar paper. So I'll show you how I take this to this. And what am I using? Window flashing, or window wrap. This is the same weather protectant, moisture barrier, weather barrier that they put around windows to seal them up after they put them in. And it'll go right in there and stick just perfect. The thing I need to do, I didn't do on that other one, is make sure this is folded down and not sticking up so it doesn't keep it from going down. So what I'm going to do is just get a little piece of painter's tape and put on there. And this is the hardest part right here. So what I do is I take one corner I'm just going to fold it back like this and get it set. On replacing the trim portion, I found a mistake that I didn't find earlier in the siding video I did. If you remember back then when we talked about that the facing should be towards you so that you don't see the edge of the trim board if you're out that way looking in, meaning you don't want it like this so you see this edge and then the trim board. Well, on all those other three corners they did it like this, but I didn't realize on this corner they did not. If you see these two trim pieces, they're different spacing, and so to do it the way I want it, the other three, or the way it should be, it doesn't work. Spacing is off. Whereas if you do it the way they had it, it's perfect. How do I fix this? Well, if I can cut this board, that's easy. But then I don't have anything here. I'm missing a gap, and it's too big a gap to fill with caulking. So guess what? You got it. I'm gonna remove this piece of trim all the way down and replace it, just so this will look nice. What you need to remember is when you're doing these repairs and improvements, you're bound to screw up. It just happens, even the professionals. What makes the difference between looking good and looking crappy is how you go to fix it so nobody can tell. Like a glove, and that little bit of spacing is perfect. I'll put caulking in there, seal that up, and we'll be good. Well, I'm gonna take this trim piece off. And what I'm gonna do is take my utility knife, score the caulking down this side and this side, and then just use my cat paw and my hammer and gently pry this up without damaging the siding itself. So let me get started here. All right, we got the siding all painted and the edges all painted. You notice I only went so far because all I need is 4 inches, because I'll paint the rest of this when I paint the house. So this part of it's all done. Next thing will be to caulk this gap here. Now, why am I caulking that? Do I have to? No. But I'm doing it so if any water gets behind my trim and the siding, it'll hit this and run down and not get inside here. Even though when I put my siding on, I'm going to caulk this to seal it up. I don't put much at the top, naturally. And then as I get down here, I start putting more and more caulk, sealant, whatever you want to call it. And when I get to where the gap is wider than the tip, I just go back and forth to fill it. Like I said,
listen carefully.
The key is to have a wet finger. Here's what I'm talking about. Instead of coming this way and have it pull away, go up into it and then come down. It fills it in beautifully. Now, one of these corners, as I'll show you, they cut these real close, so I just bridge the whole thing instead of doing individual like this is. Okay, we're all done. You can see that looks pretty neat. I'll show you another one. It doesn't look so neat, but got it all sealed. And don't worry, that those pieces of paper that are lifted up, there's caulk in behind there too. Now this trim piece here is 3/4, and they're 16-foot lengths. With LP Smart Side, all their stuff comes in 16-foot lengths. I'll leave a link below and maybe up there, if I can remember, for the video I did on this LP Smart Side. So with LP Smart Side, it's a dimensional lumber. What do I mean? If you look it up on their website, it'll say it's 1 inch by 4 inches. Well, it's not. It's just like 2 by 4s. They're not 2 by 4. They're 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Well, that's what this is, 3/4 by 3.5 inches. So it's like a 1 by 4 dimensional. I'm going to measure these out from each end and cut. And I'll have my scrap piece left off in the center here. Alrighty, so I'm putting the corner trims together and like this, and I've got them marked as to which way they go. Like I say, the facing part will be this way, because that way you don't see this edge of the board. So I got one left to do, and I thought I'd show you how I did that. So I'm using a 5/64 drill bit. When you put these in, you got to pre-drill holes before you put them together, otherwise they'll split. Drilled this piece here, and so I just need to drill through and mark the bottom and where to drill. And I'm making sure I'm burying this drill bit all the way, and that gives me the right length for the nail. And then the other thing I do is I make sure that my edges are flush when I do it. When you put these nails in, you can tell, like most of these, I'm straight this way, but I'm kind of cooked that way. Next thing I do is I run a little bead of caulking down here, and I mean a small bead. I don't want a lot of push out. And I try and make sure I get some over the hole, so when the nail hits it, it drives some caulking in the nail hole with it. If I get a little squeeze out, I'm okay. I just want to make sure. I try to hope I get most of it to the back side. Nail it in. Just like that. Sure you line up. You can tell it finds that hole and goes right in. All right, we're ready to install this first one. You can see the caulking there. Now I did this so that I could just lay these in here. I know they would be square and set tight against the corner. You only get one shot at this. You gotta make it count, because once these ring shank nails go in, it does not want to come out. Just like that, it's done. Now I'll come back on those that didn't countersink and use my nail set and sink them. So one other thing I want to do before I caulk over these nail holes, as you can see I got tape on some of them, is where these two pieces joined was a seam. Now when I nailed these two together, I put some caulk in there to seal it, and you can see in certain spots as it squeezed out to the front side. What I've done is basically put tape on each side of that seam, and I've only put like a 32nd of exposed material. I want a little bit of bridging of these two materials. Fairly easy. Okay, here's a close-up. See how nice that went in there? Now that little bit over here I'll get with my finger. But it's a nice straight edge. Okay, got it. The tape over all the nail holes. I'll do a couple of these and show you how easy it is. And I'll finish them, pull the tape off, and we'll take a look at it. Just like that, you're all done. Hold it up there, and done. And that's it. So I'll finish this and I'll show you how you do that other side. And for those of you that are still with me on this video at this point, I truly want to thank you for sticking around, and we'll see the end result. I just take my tape down, and I'm no more than 1/8 of an inch away from this edge. Fill up the gap. When I get about 3/4 the way down, I just kind of stop, let off of the button here, otherwise the caulking keeps coming out. And what I want to do is make sure I get this crack up in here filled. So I take my finger over and turn. I kind of go light the first time. The excess, I know there's excess. I put it right there to fill that hole for the next one. I make sure from here to here is a nice transition. There's no gap. I wipe the caulk off of the tape. I get my finger way up here in this groove, make sure it's not filled up in there. I take another light swipe. I go light at the top, and when I get down here towards the narrow end, I go hard pressure. And that's so my finger will mold into that crack and fill it. Alrighty, we're all done. You see, caulking all the way down, looks really nice. Caulking on the nails, caulking in that seam. On that side, and here you got this trim board caulked. Alrighty, this part of the project's all done. Gets us one step closer to putting some paint on this old pig. I want to thank you for sticking around. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments about how none of this is necessary. You're probably right, but being the OCD that I am, I did it. And I wanted extra protection. I don't know how long I'm going to live in this house. Maybe another year, maybe 8 years. I don't know. But I don't want to have to come back and replace this, worry about it rotting, worry about rot behind there, or anything else. And now I don't have to. My hope is that doing this extra bit will save that from ever happening, at least while I have it, maybe the next person. So with that, I want to thank you for coming along with me on this. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe down below and hit the like button. The thumbs up would be the nice one. And we'll see you on the next video.